Welcome to Leaders Gotta Lead. Join our leaders and hosts, Dan Gomer and Scott Harshman, as they bring you powerful strategies and insights to help you lead with purpose, impact, and unstoppable success.
All right, welcome everybody to the latest episode of Leaders Gotta Lead. Today we have one of our amazing teammates, Tricia Stefaniak, on the show. We've got Scott trying to figure out how to work his camera on Zoom. So he may just be joining us in audio today, but that's all right. For those of you who are checking this out for the first time, the purpose of this show is to just share ideas on leadership. We're not here to have all the answers. Tricia doesn't have all the answers. None of us have all the answers. And anybody who says that they do, probably not somebody you want to follow.
They're lying.
They're lying to you. And so we're just here to share these ideas and see what other people have to say, different resources, how do we grow as leaders, all that kind of stuff. And this is something that I'm really passionate about, and I know Scott is too. You know, the more people we have talking about leadership and how to grow as leaders, the better off this world is going to be. That's the way I see it. And so I know there's other leadership podcasts. And so we're just here to kind of contribute to the greater good by sharing ideas on how we can be better as leaders. And the last thing that I will say about this is that if you're watching this and you say, one day I want to be a leader, I hope you recognize that you're already a leader. The way that you talk to the barista, the way that you raise your kids, the way that you operate with your spouse or with your coworkers, those are all leadership opportunities. And you don't have to have an official leadership role to be a leader. And so my hope is that you can still glean some insights from these interviews, even if you don't necessarily consider yourself a leader. Scott, anything to add to that?
Don't depend on the internet to be a leader either.
If you just got to go to audio, that's fine too.
That might be happening.
Pretty mixed, but at least we'll hear your wisdom. All right. Well, let's jump right in. So today we've got, as I said, Tricia. Tricia she's part of Realtor Partners, our real estate team. So she's obviously a licensed realtor. She's been doing that for a number of years now. She's been in various forms of education and leadership for the last 30 years. As a teacher, a high school teacher. It was social studies, right? Or no,
Science.
math. So it was science. Okay.
Yeah, chemistry and physics.
Okay, that's right. That's right. For some reason, I was like, no, it's different. It wasn't science because I was science and it's different. Anyway, forget about me. So she was a high school science teacher. You did a bunch of stuff within your church and your youth group and leadership in that respect. You do coaching, you do personal coaching, you have a family. So, you've been in a leadership role for over 30 years. And, one thing that I just love about you is your passion for growth, both for yourself and for other people. And I really see this come out just in the way that you interact with life. You hurt your shoulder recently, and your reactions to that and your ability to bounce back from that and your commitment to, keeping that positive attitude. And so on a lot of fronts, you've just been a very positive influence in my life. I love learning from you and just watching the way that you show up. And so I've got a lot of respect for you as a friend, as a leader. And so super excited to have you on the show and talk with you a little bit more about this. So thank you.
No, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, sweet. So let's jump right in. So we always like to start the episode by asking the same question, which is, what is a leader to you, or what makes somebody a great leader?
So I would think that a great leader is someone who puts their own ego aside and allows the people around them to grow into everything they're supposed to be. So someone who has great discernment, great listening skills, someone who's not afraid to surround themselves with people who are even better than they are.
Yeah. So if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're, and this is why I love your perspective. You're basically talking about this idea. What I hear is this idea of like leaders follow. So it's not that I'm here and you're there and you're going to follow me and you're just going to do what I tell you to do, but it's this kind of deeper desire to improve other people's lives and kind of leading people where they want to go. So leading by following what benefits other people.
Mhm. Also encouraging them. So as a leader, you are a catalyst for the organization's growth, a personal person's growth. So when you have that spark and that ability to connect and see people for who they are, you can get them over obstacles, through obstacles. And it is a little bit of follow, but it's also a little bit of go, go. So
Yeah.
it's exciting to be on both sides of that.
So just to kind of play devil's advocate a little bit here, what is so we talked about this very briefly, and we'll probably bring this up on a lot of episodes because I think it's an interesting thing is, you look at somebody like who did horrible things in this world, but they were a leader, right? Your Hitlers, your Stalins, your whatever, right? What is the difference between somebody like that and say somebody who you see as a great leader? Like what separates the two? I guess maybe what is it about those people who did bad things that in your book you would say, you know what, that doesn't necessarily classify them as a good leader? Does that make sense?
Mhm. I would say that I'm going to have to go a little deep here, and that's a soul issue.
Mm.
And you can be very talented and you can influence people and draw people to a goal and still not have good intentions. So I think that talent, but character trumps talent when it
Mm.
comes to those kind of conversations. So that's the person has the talent, but their character utilize that talent for evil instead of good. And so for me, I just go right to the root, and that's probably a soul problem.
Right. Are they really, going back to what you were saying before, are they really leading people to where those people want to go? Or are they leading them where they think that they should go or where they want them to go? Right. So maybe the difference is kind of in that concept of good leaders. I love this. I feel like this is kind of a very interesting vein and very specific in that a good leader has the best interests of the people in mind versus their own specific desires and wants.
I agree.
Yeah, I love that.
How would you define the difference between a manager or supervisor and a leader?
Mm. I think that's pretty simple in the fact if you break it down to just the basics of each of those opportunities. I think people who supervise and manage are more task oriented, and the leader possibly might be more relational
Mm.
orientated. So not that managers can't have a great opportunity to build relationships with people, but I think the role in itself, when you manage someone, you're managing them to get something done. When you're leading someone, you're leading them to become something better and more.
Mm.
I like that.
Yeah. So why did you become a leader? What is it that drew you to these numerous roles that you have taken on as a leader?
Yeah. Well, you won't believe this, but younger, I was super quiet, had 1 to 3 friends. I don't consider myself a leader, but I think I was actually a quiet leader. I observed really well and I kept myself out of situations and navigated that way. But then as I met my husband and kind of got into my own adulthood, I really don't know where the leader line started, but no matter where I was, I ended up in a leadership role. And for me, when I became a teacher, the thing that drew me to that was I had a professor that said education is not shoving information in. It's actually the word education in its Latin root is to draw something out. And that spoke to me. So I wanted to draw something out of students. I had an incredible teaching opportunities left and right where I got to bring education to life instead of here's a packet and I'll tell you that you're passing in 30 days. And then when I became a mom, and that kind of molded into some volunteer positions, that molded into some paid positions, I just grew into those leadership roles and had wonderful mentors along the way. But I think there's just that natural ability in you also that you can see forward, or you can see the best in someone and you want to bring them forward. So I think that is how it happened. I'm not quite sure, but I just was able to jump into these little opportunities that just grew and grew and grew. And I grew with them because I had great mentors and great leaders. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to dig a little deeper on your teaching background.
Sure.
I think like teachers are remarkable to me, especially science teachers, because like I suck at science. But I always think of the picture of like the goldfish, the giraffe, the elephant, the monkey, and then like, let's say the cat, and it says, climb that tree. I always think of that when I think of teachers and being a leader as well. So I know you had to teach kids from multiple different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different cultures, whatever it may be, right? So how did you, as a leader, pull out the best from those people?
Well, one of my tips and tricks was I would memorize the kids' names before they walked into my room.
Oh my gosh, I did not. That's
And
impressive.
I will tell you, it scared some of them. They're like, why do you know me? And some of them were like, almost all of them were taken back. And what I was able to say immediately, they would be like, how do you know my name? And I'm like, you're important enough to know. And I would say things like, your name has value and you have value. And so I think I'm a woman of faith. I think that God put in my being the opportunity to see others. I have one student in particular that walked into the room with, I'll say, and we've talked about this before, so I can share this. I think he had a lot of gruff, maybe some anger, maybe that I want to be the tough kid, but I could just see right through him and I saw his heart. So I think that I've been given eyes to really, really see people. And I utilized that in spades when I was a teacher. So I made sure they knew that I valued them. I made sure that the environment was a dual respect environment. And I just leaned in. I honestly just made sure that every kid that walked through my door knew that they were important to me. And that kid, I still talk to him. He's a dad of 2 and he teases all the time. He teases me all the time. But I feel like I got to impact his heart because other teachers just pushed against the gruff. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I see a big teddy bear.
Yeah.
so there was no tension. There was more joy. I think filled leadership. I think that's probably my superpower is joy filled leadership.
So for somebody who's watching this video, who is like, okay, well, that's great for Tricia. Tricia has all of this natural born talent. And she just happens to see life this way and has all these abilities, right? Like same way somebody might look at like a Peyton Manning or a professional athlete, or, oh, well, they just had all the talent, right? Obviously, that's an overstatement. So, can you share a little bit about how the difference between your kind of innate skill set, we all have an innate skill set, right? Versus your ability to take that skill set and finely tune it to create what it is. Like, how did you nurture your natural talents to become a better leader?
So I come from a background that is a little dicey and it was a little more tumultuous than the average person. So I think that gave me this innate opportunity to observe and listen well. And what I did was when I had great leaders around me, I asked them questions and I listened. And I really put things into practice that I learned. So I think that when you want to be a good leader, you're going to surround yourself or really pay attention to the people that are doing it well and right. For instance, I was raised a lot of my childhood time by my great grandparents and grandparents. Their behavior was absolutely ingrained to me that your word equals action equals a result. There was no empty words. So I think that hit hard and stayed with me for a very long time. And then, I'm going to be 54 in a couple of weeks. There's maturity behind utilizing all the things that you've learned. So I think time and learning and surrounding yourself and paying attention to people who are doing it well, and then make it yours. Don't just try to copy somebody else, because there's just one Tricia. You can't be Tricia, and you can't be Dan or Scott. You have to be true to who you are, with the goals that you're learning, with the concepts that you're learning. So I think that I paid attention to who really did well, and the character. We had talked just earlier, what's behind good leadership and bad leadership. I really honed in on people's character and paid attention to character. And then their leadership was great also.
Right. Yeah. And so I guess what I hear from all of that, if I kind of boil it down in my own mind, is lifelong learner,
Mm-hmm.
always looking for opportunities to grow, number one. And then the other thing that I'm actually going to be talking about next week at an event is implementation, like leading by example, so to speak, right? I mean, if I say, I learned this great thing, or I'm going to go do this great thing, and then I don't do it, then your whole platform kind of falls flat, right? So as a leader, if you want to inspire other people, you have to be moving forward yourself and demonstrating what it looks like to have good character, demonstrating what it looks like to implement and do all of those things.
Yes, definitely. I agree.
Yeah.
I look at age as just a number, right? So I look at it more as experience. And you've been a lifelong learner, and you've probably have a lot of different things while you were learning where you're like, I can easily gravitate to that. I can easily learn that. I can easily concept or implement that piece. What's been the easiest thing for you to implement, and what's been the hardest thing for you to implement as a leader?
That one is easy. I will always be, this is a little bit of a biblical reference, but I will always be the Mary in the room, not the Martha. So
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah, the tasks will get done. Not my favorite. Thank goodness Dan shared with some of his resources. So I've taken some of those tasks and hired some people to help me with those. I love the relationship. So I will always lean in. I will always look for someone's heartbeat in the room before I will look for a task in the room. So probably the tasks are my obstacles, and the relationship is like my sweet spot. I just want to hug you until you believe in yourself.
And I think one of the things of being a good leader is knowing your strengths and your weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
So what have you done to help with your weakness of not being, it sounds like, task oriented? So
Yes.
Are you hiring out? Are you delegating? Like, what does that look like to you?
So actually my leadership coaching is based on signature talents and non-patterns. So I coach people all the time how corporate is like, fix your weaknesses. I kind of coach in a whole different way. And I say, there's 4 ways to deal with your weaknesses: delegate, systematize, partner with somebody who has that talent stronger than yours, or leverage one of your talents to accomplish something that might derive out of non-patterns. So I will never, ever preach to anyone, fix your weaknesses, because I think that your weaknesses are weaknesses on purpose, and do those 4 things. And you're going to be able to maneuver around it, but stay in your strength and focus on your strength, because that's what gives you energy. Talking to people and relating to people and encouraging people energizes me. Doing a task drains me. So let me systematize. Like I was just able to get Megan on as a bookkeeper because I hate my receipts. It drains me. I walk past them, the pile piles up. Just not a great situation. Now I have someone who is an expert at that. That is their sweet spot. And I can go on and do the things that bring me energy and joy. So it's a opportunity to delegate, systematize, lean into someone who does it better, and or what is a strength that I have that could help me do that for a little while, which is what I've been doing. So those things.
Hey guys, Dan Gomer here with the Leaders Gotta Lead podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully you are enjoying the content, and if you are, I've got great news because there's more where that came from. Just click on the link in the show notes to discover new ways to plug into what we're doing, to find new content that we're putting out, and to discover how we might be able to work together to elevate your leadership game. Just click on the link in the show notes and let's take our leadership success to the next level. Well, and here's the cool thing about, I hear you talking about coaching, right? Like, I believe that behind every great coach or leader is a great coach or a great leader. To think that we're doing it on our own and we're fooling ourselves. Self-made millionaire does not exist. There isn't a single one on the face of the planet. Get over yourself. Right? So same thing goes with leadership and being in that position, understanding that we're stronger together. I know my weaknesses. I'm not very good at delegating and systematizing and things like that. And so I'm trying to work through exactly what you're talking about. And I have a coach that's helping me do that. And I want to touch base with you too, outside of this call and kind of talk about more of that stuff because, I see value there. Right. And so great leaders are always looking for ways to get better, always looking for ways to improve, which means we need to work with people who are outside of our strengths. If I just hire a coach that's good at what I'm doing, they're not going to be very effective. So finding those people who can help us hone in our skills to overcome our weaknesses or work with our weaknesses or, do all of those things are going to be hugely important if we want to grow and expand as a leader.
Correct.
Yeah. So do you have a leader that you really look up to that you want to emulate? Maybe a leader you've had in your life, maybe a historical figure, maybe somebody who, maybe even a made up character, right? Is there a leader that you look up to and go, yes?
Well, I referenced that I was raised by my great-grandparents and my grandparents. These are people who were born in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. My Nana was born 1914, and I had her until she was 104 and
Wow.
7 months old. So she almost made it to 105. And I will share with you that I know like people look to historical and whatnot, and that's wonderful. But these people made such an imprint on my heart. I do feel that I walk around with different honor, different integrity, different love, different unconditional love. And it's because they showed up, they did what they said they were going to do, and they had mercy and grace when things didn't go quite right. And that brings me to, it might sound cliche to some people, but again, I'm a woman of faith, and I love the fact that Jesus to me is probably the most grand leader of them all in regards to when he encountered people, he just was present with them exactly where they were at, but never left them that way. Anyone who walked away from his presence was forever changed. And to me, that is the ultimate goal of a leader. When you are in the presence with somebody, that you are so present with them and you see their value and you want to expand that value and encourage that value, and they walk away different, and then they impact the world differently. So I think that's at probably the root of my leadership mentors is meet people where they're at. You don't judge them there. You offer grace and unconditional love there. You offer guidance if they ask, and then they leave different. They leave better and inspired and believing in themselves. So that's probably the 5 people that I emulate in my leadership.
Yeah, that's awesome. What was your grandma's secret to 105? Did she ever tell you what she thought her secret was?
She just had good lineage. They were German and English, and her parents lived to 97. And she just, in my opinion, ate really well. She always had like a meat and a veggie and a starch, and she was super active. And she was just the cutest, patootiest. I literally took her to Alaska for her 104th birthday, picked her up and put her into one of those tiny planes so we could see the top of the glaciers. And she just, I think adventure drove her and life drove her. She was very regal, and she was very, she was enthralled with life. She was a reader. She was just an amazing woman, amazing woman. So I think it was just a combination of genetics, her adventurous spirit, her healthy lifestyle, and she was a feisty little thing. So I love that. I took a little bit of that with me.
Yeah, love it. Scott, you still with us, buddy?
I'm still here. I'm still here. Everything's a little lagged, so I apologize if I'm kind of like coming in and out.
No, you're good.
So I heard you talk about your the people that you mentor after and you really follow and things like that. So I think sometimes as a leader, and Jesus had to do this as well, is you kind of have to give, I'm going to call it tough love, and kind of get your point across with a little bit more directness. Okay. So my question to you is, how do you get that across to people where it's still out of love, but it's not out of like despite or hate or anger or anything like that?
Yeah.
How do you give tough love?
Well, truth sets you free. And in the Bible, it does say to speak truth in love. So I think it goes back to honor. You want to honor that person. And it isn't honoring somebody to not have a hard conversation. It actually dishonors them, and it makes them go down a path a little bit longer. And I've been guilty of that myself. I have loved someone and tried to encourage them and probably gave them too much time to grow, and it just wasn't happening. So at the end, the conversation was a little harder, but I tried my best to honor them and create a pathway of honor for them. So I think that's how I have the hard conversations. I'm truthful, I'm clear, I'm loving, but there's an opportunity to grow in this. I always look at conflict. I know people hate conflict, and I actually look at conflict as a really awesome opportunity to grow forward. So if you go into a conversation with that mindset of this is not fun, but it's going to grow us forward, there's a different tone to it. So it doesn't sound as harsh, but it sounds forward motion, and kind. I think kindness is a really good leadership tool. So I would probably say that, like, I try to keep the honor intact and the forward motion intact.
I love that, right? That the truth will set you free. And by the way, this show is kind of loosely targeted towards real estate agents. And so if you're a realtor and you just heard what she said there, there's some gems in there, right? How do you have these tough conversations with your clients? Being nice is not the same as being kind, right? Being nice is like placating people, and nobody likes that. Being kind is like coming from a place of understanding, like, hey, I know this is frustrating for you, having compassion for their position. At the same time, this is where we are, this is what needs to happen, having honest conversations, being very direct, but at the same time being kind. And I think a lot of times real estate agents confuse being kind with being nice, and they're trying to be nice and they're trying to like protect feelings or whatever it is. I did this for a long time and it always bit me in the butt. And when I finally got direct, but not rude, people started like internalizing a little bit more what I was talking about. And, I think the other thing that I loved that I heard you say was you're talking about, oh, now I'm spacing it, but you were talking about, oh, dang it, I just lost my idea. So Scott, what do you have to say? Because I've lost it.
No, I like to piggyback off of what you're saying is there is a difference between being nice and being kind. And I think that there are times where you're trying to be nice. And the way I look at somebody trying to be nice versus being kind is I look at being nice as almost like deceptive. It almost feels like it's fake, right? So I think that, really looking through that and being able to show and being the kind of the truthfulness, I think that helps out a ton. And that's something else, right? So like when you're looking at leaders, and I'm sure you've had leaders in the past that you've looked up to, you thought they were great, you thought they were perfect, and then all of a sudden something happened where you're like, I don't know if I want to follow that leader anymore. I don't know if I want to follow that mentor anymore. And don't mention names. We don't need names on here. But like, is there something that you can think of or an event that's happened where you're like, oh yeah, that's not the leader I thought they were?
Yeah, I mean, I'm 54, so I've had quite a few of those. And I think the common thread in
You
all
keep throwing numbers out here, Tricia. It's experience, okay?
Hey,
No,
she
I'm just
knows that
old.
age is just a number, Scott.
Yeah.
I say age is a state of mind. See?
Oh, I'm just old. Look at this silver hair. So I think that the common thread in leaders that I didn't have respect for or I didn't care for was an arrogance or a pride that walked in the room before they walked in the room, a intimidation technique that unfortunately my heart looked at and just was like, bring it on. But I kept that inside. So I think that when someone is insecure and scared and not quite sure who they are as a leader, that is when bad leadership and bad character emerges.
Yeah, and how do you overcome that, right? So they're insecure. They're a leader and they're insecure. And there's that little voice in their head that says, yeah, I think I recognize that I'm insecure, right? Which doesn't happen a lot, but let's just say they have that little thing. And they go, all right, so how do I overcome that? What can I focus on to be a leader of the people as opposed to like maybe a self-serving leader?
And to piggyback off that question too is scarcity, right? Like when you are scared, the last 2.5 years in the real estate mortgage world, it's been scary. Like it's been tough. It's been a tough market. So same thing, but also for being fearful.
Yeah, I would say that I'm not sure. I think that leaders, oops, hold on one second. For me, I think that those insecurities, if they go unaddressed, if you have a leader who doesn't know how to grow, the leadership can become toxic and it can hurt so many people along the way. And the hard part that I've seen is that leaders like that sometimes stay in a leadership position for a very long time. So there is just a trail of unfortunateness of people who could have been amazing leaders that got kind of stepped on along the way and maybe even terminated because of this person's ego. So for me, I mean, I would just hope that there's somebody who can speak truth around people like that to bring those insecurities up to the light and say, hey, let's look at this because we want to grow forward. But
well, let's say that they do have that awareness. Let's say they've got somebody around them, right, who's just like, hey, you're being an a-hole, right? You're not leading well. You're whatever it is, your ego's in the way. Like they're knocking on the door, and this person finally kind of goes, maybe they're right. What do I do? I've done it this way for so long. How do I transform? What can I focus on to take me from that leader that's full of fear, that leader that's full of ego, that leader that hasn't been pulling people along, right? They've been in this cloud and all of a sudden the clouds are starting to part and they're like, ooh, I think I could do this better. What can they focus on to change that mindset? I guess what I'm getting at is how do we simplify this process for somebody who wants to make these changes?
I think that one, you have that concept from the Addams Family movie where they send Wednesday into the Disney cabin until she comes out and she's kind of smiling. I love that concept where hopefully the person around a person who is not a great leader and they are having those revelations of, wait a minute, I can change. I think leaning into what their strengths are. Where am I doing a good job? And really focusing on that instead of all the bad things that they've done, really lean into, wait a minute, but this is a strength of mine and I can be a good leader off of this platform and then just keep growing. So I would say immerse yourself in whatever that strength is, learning about it, developing it, having someone speak truth into it, and then, be honest with the people around you who you didn't lead quite well and say, I'm sorry, but I'm working on this. I know this is my strength and I'm going to lean into this. And I'd love you to walk alongside me because I value you as a team member. So that would probably be my simplistic way of like just drenching yourself toward your strength, having vulnerable conversations. And I think leaders miss out on that. Like you can't technically be someone's, bestie, but there is a level of vulnerability that leadership needs because it makes people see you as a real person and follow you to the goal. So I would say that.
A lot to unpack there. The vulnerability piece is huge. And for me, I don't know, maybe this is true for you guys too, but I find that when I don't have to hold up false pretenses, my life is so much easier. I have way more energy. I don't ever have to worry about getting caught in a gotcha. Because if somebody catches me in a gotcha, then it means I was wrong. And okay, great, you got me. Like, I shouldn't have done that. I'll change, right? That vulnerability just has opened up so much energy in my life because I'm not protecting myself anymore. And it's a learned trait, at least for me. It was a learned trait. I was constantly protecting myself. Exhausting, right? So these are things that we do have the ability to learn if we choose to.
How did you identify it?
Identify this kind of like protecting myself issue.
Yeah, the lack of vulnerability, the protection, that type of stuff.
It's a long process, but I think where it all started was just when I started taking I'll call it my personal growth journey. When I started to go inward, I started to get curious. I started to really ask questions. So instead of looking outward going, well, that person this and that person that, I was looking inward and going, well, what is my role in my life? And then there was just a series of things that came up as I was trying to discover things about myself, and I learned how little I understood about myself. And so I guess where it really started was, well, for me, it started at the bottom of a depression hole and like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. That was my what do they call it? Like my lowest moment, right? And that was the moment where I was like, okay, I'm ready to do something different. So that was the moment where I woke up, but it was the curiosity of how I can do things better and be a better person and move forward that ultimately led me towards the understandings of who I am and how I operate and how I can do it better.
So you use one of my favorite quotes. You pulled the thumbs instead of pointing the fingers.
Right. Yeah.
And one of the cool things you brought up too is that the state of curiosity. And I think that's also an incredible leadership characteristic to have or skill to have is just to be curious. So I love that you shared that too, because curiosity can take you in a totally different direction.
Absolutely. That's where I think that's where all invention is born, right? Like, this is stupid. Can we do it better? You know what's fascinating? Suitcases. They didn't put wheels on suitcases until what, like the 90s? Like the mid to late 90s? That's crazy. How did nobody come up with this idea earlier? Like everyone's just carrying around hundreds of pounds of luggage. Like, yeah, this is the way we do it. Anyway. Someone would have gotten curious in the 60s. They would have had wheels back then. Anyway, I don't know. Dan's random thoughts for the day. You're welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I mean, we could continue this conversation, like all these conversations. I love these. I could talk about this stuff all day long. But let's start wrapping things up here. And Tricia, I'd like to give you an opportunity to maybe share a little bit of how can people reach out to you? How can they connect with you? Maybe they're interested. I don't know how much you're doing with the coaching stuff, but how can they reach out to you for the real estate stuff, the coaching stuff, like all that kind of stuff? Like, give us your final thoughts.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for allowing me to be here. It was wonderful to spend time with both of you. And I do have Instagram. It's just Tricia _ the word at home Colorado. And anyone can DM me there. I think it's the easiest way to get a hold of me. And I just hope this opportunity to spend time with you guys has inspired somebody else to just step out. I think we get in our own way. We're not sure if we're leadership material. And it just takes that one moment of courage in ourselves and belief in ourselves. And if you need encouragement and you need to be rallied in that direction, definitely DM me.
Yeah, and here's what I'll say. If you are looking for a real estate agent who is going to have your best interest in mind, because at the end of the day, I think that's probably the top priority, and then there's all the other things that filter down through it. Because if you don't have that integrity in something like real estate and lending and those kinds of fields, it can be a huge problem. And so if you are thinking about buying or selling a house and you want somebody to represent you with integrity, Tricia is an amazing resource. I would highly recommend reaching out to her and seeing if she can help you with all of that. So I got to give you a huge shout out because I just have so much respect for what you do and how you operate.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And the respect is mutual. You're an amazing man, Scott. You are an amazing man. The heartbeats that you guys have to encourage others is inspiring. I love being in this team, and I've grown since I've been here. So I love that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Scott. Scott, anything for you to wrap up with here?
If there's a good internet provider out there, please contact me.
Immediately.
ASAP. No, Tricia, thank you so much for hopping on here. It's great to learn even more about you. I mean, you are remarkable, and I love the insight that you give, and I love the insight that you give from a woman's perspective as well. I think that's super important in today's day and age is hearing your insight on that side of it. So thank you for being on here.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thanks, guys. So I'll just wrap up by saying this. Scott and I, part of the reason why we do this, we love sharing these ideas. We also want to partner with great leaders, and that means partnering with great leaders to have them on the show, to become referral partners, even potentially joining our team. So we're always looking to connect with more leaders. So if you are a leader, if you want to be on the show, reach out to us. We'd love to connect with you. Go grab coffee, go grab lunch, and get to know you a little bit more. So Tricia, thanks again for being on the show. Scott, thanks for being here, even with the lagging internet. Always good to hear you, even if we can't see you. Have a great day.
Like #remix.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you guys on the next time on the Leaders Gotta Lead podcast.
Leaders gotta lead.
Leaders gotta lead.